Hey, I'm glad you made it in. And in this mini course, I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know in order to get started in UI UX design. Now, just to give you a bit of background, I myself have been a UI UX designer for over 8 years now, and I'm currently making six figures by working with clients from all around the world. In this video, my goal is to share with you everything that you need to know in order to get started in UI UX design in the fastest and most efficient way possible. Now, I'm also going to discuss some of the mistakes which I did earlier on as a student so that you don't have to make them and you can save months, if not years of hard work. Also below in this page, you're going to find all sorts of design freebies which are going to enable you to speed up your workflow and get projects done faster and more efficiently. And I update these regularly, so check out soon on that. Now, without further ado, let's get started and let's discuss the most efficient strategies in order to get into UI UX design this year. Now, this is one of the best times to get into UI UX design because the demand is very high, especially considering the fact that in these past months we're facing this global pandemic. So essentially businesses are looking to improve their online presence and companies which are location dependent are having a bigger toll than companies which are remote or online. So this is actually a really good time to go ahead and dive deep into UI UX design. There's lots of startups and companies that want to establish themselves, so it's definitely a good timing. So let's get started, but even before we go into the tips and tricks on how to get and the structure of how to actually get into UI UX design, why should you actually learn from me? So a brief introduction for those of you who are not familiar with me. So my name is Pierluigi and I'm a senior UI UX designer with over 8 years of experience, and I worked with over 30 companies, and in the past 6 years I worked 100% remotely. And I worked with companies from Fortune 500 to funded startups that wanted to get to their first million in fundings, and any company in between, really. I worked with web design agencies, UI UX design agencies, so quite a bit of variety when it comes to my experience. I also have a BA in graphic design after I attended Ravensbourne University in London, and I created over 20 design products which are selling pretty well in the marketplace. On top of that, I always had and I still have a big passion for design. So now that that is out of the way, let's get started. Let's talk about the education and how you can actually get into UI UX design. So there's mainly three routes, I would say. The very first one is the self-taught route. So if you're going with that one, I would highly suggest you to at least hire a mentor for a couple of hours to basically tell you how you can structure your curriculum and how you can actually learn everything that you need to know about design essentials from the start to softwares to at least give you like a brief guidance, a structure, because when you're first starting out by yourself in this field, you don't even know where you should focus, because there's so much out there. There's so many informations, especially there's a lot of free information, that it can be hard to actually focus on one single thing and figure out if that one thing is actually very important or if it's a nice have but not essential to get your foot in the door as fast as possible, if that makes sense. So you might just focus on the wrong things simply because you don't have that expert looking behind your shoulders. So I would highly suggest you to get a mentor if you're going with the self-taught road. And that's something which actually helped me a lot also in my journey, because although I took intensive courses, as I'm going to explain in just a minute, and I went through university. I also had mentors. For example, there is this designer who used to work, or actually, I think he's still working at Facebook, and he was really useful. He was really helpful because he gave me some great advice in a moment where I wasn't sure where to focus my attention on. So that was really helpful, and I also had many other mentors, also in marketing, and other people who essentially has already been there and done those things that I was looking to do. So a mentor is definitely very useful if you're looking to get into UI UX design and you're going with the self-doubt road. So let's talk about intensive courses, because maybe you don't want to go completely on your own and learn everything on your own, but you don't even want to, for example, go to university and spend years in university and possibly spend a lot of money, because usually the university route is not cheap, especially if you're planning to study in the UK or in the US. So intensive courses can be really good because they give you all the advantages that a mentor gives you. So you get the structure, you get the theory, you get the exercises, and usually by the end of an intensive course or bootcamp, you're also going to have a portfolio, which is going to enable you to get the first projects. So this is really something that I would highly suggest you to consider if you're not willing to go through college and or this self-doubt road. Probably if I were to go back in time, knowing what I know now, I would probably go with an intensive course, maybe a 12-month one, and that gives me a really good solid base understanding of design, UI UX design, and all those things, and would probably skip university, because although university was good, plus you get all the university experience, which is a unique thing in and of itself, I think that I didn't really get all that big of an advantage out of university, and I definitely paid quite a bit more than what that advantage gave me. So it's definitely something to consider, and there's intensive courses both locally, especially if you're in a big city, but you also have intensive courses remotely. So there really isn't any reason why you wouldn't want to go on an intensive course. And then for those of you who actually want to go all the way in, you can always go to college and university. It's going to be good because you're going to have plenty of time to learn the concepts, develop a portfolio. You're also going to make a lot of connections in universities, and those are definitely things that you want to consider, because you can really get your foot in the door more easily if you have those connections, or sometimes even the degree. So for example, my very first internship was at a company with 200 employees. Was a really good company to get started, and the head of design over there, which was my manager, essentially the person who would manage me as a junior designer, and he was the senior designer, the ex-senior designer at Sony Europe. So just to tell you, like, it was a really good starting place, and one of the reasons why I got in was that first of all, I was in the right location, so I was living in London, while other candidates were actually living in other places. Some of them were in London, but some of the top candidates were in other countries, so I didn't need to relocate, so that was a little bit of a plus, but of course it wasn't the main reason why I got hired there. The main reason was I had a good portfolio. I was in a university over there, and generally speaking, um, we just was working well together and all that. So yeah, it's definitely something to consider. Also, location of the university and things like that. They can definitely help. So let's go on to the next part, which is the actual basic building blocks of your education. So these are going to be like from a high level, and of course each and every one of these building blocks have ramifications, and you're going to go in depth as you learn each and every one of these. But I would always start with learning the design essentials. So things like color, theory, typography, layouts, shapes, all of those things you really want to dive deep when you're first starting out in this field. And you really want to have a basic understanding of these principles. And personally, I would also recommend you to learn some art and some fine art, such as drawing and painting. I actually went to a high school that was a art high school, so we did a lot of drawing, we did a lot of painting and visual arts, the most classic ones, art history and all that. And it really helped. It's not game changing, but it all adds up because the same principles you're going to apply in the next building blocks, which is of course learning about UI UX and web design. So UI UX, there are a lot of things that you want to consider. There is a theory part and there's also a practical part. So the theory is going to be more about reading books and learning about user psychology, marketing, advertising, how we communicate as a species in and of itself. And there's going to be a lot of theory which you want to go through when you're learning about the UI UX design and also web design. I would group them almost in the same field because the material which you're going to learn about is going to be similar, and there's going to be a lot of overlap between the two. Generally speaking, you want to get into all of the theory of UX, and when it comes to UI design and web design, my best recommendation would be to learn things like design systems. And also, as you're starting out, my best recommendation would be to actually just copy designs which you like. So take, for example, websites, take a screenshot of the website, put it in a design software that you like, and then just try to replicate it. I remember when I was first starting out and I was trying to learn about design aesthetics, UI design, and learning about the visual design especially. I did this for a year straight. So basically, I would just take screenshots of portions of an app or of portions of a website page, and I would put it back then into Photoshop, which is a design software that I do not recommend anymore. But basically what I did is I would put it side by side with my version. So I would put it on the left, and then on the right I would try to replicate it pixel by pixel. I did this for a year straight, and oh my god, this helped me so much because learning from success when it comes to visual design, it definitely really helps. You pick up nuances which usually would take you so much more time to pick up. So this is definitely something which is really useful for visual design. There's no UX help that, like, this doesn't help for the UX really. It's just for the visual design, just to learn about type of typography which you use in UI UX, in websites, in web apps, in mobile apps, and so on, and color styles, layout, white space, all of that good stuff. So it really is an exercise which I would recommend, and there's going to be some people which would argue that this doesn't bring any logic to the table, so you don't really understand why that button was created that way or why that element is located in that space. But my point is that this is an isolated exercise specifically for improving your visual design. So of course UX is not going to be the main achievement or focus for this exercise, but it can really help you become a good visual designer fast. So that being said, let's move on to the next section, which is softwares. Now, softwares, of course, are going to be, for the most part, learning about the design softwares, but it wouldn't only be about design softwares. You also need to learn collateral and the other type of softwares which you're going to use throughout your career, such as Slack, the Google Suite. So you're likely going to use softwares like Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets, and all sorts of other softwares, really. So this would be a good base, and of course you need to learn the design software, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. Now, quick parenthesis, when it comes to web design, I didn't add as a basic block coding, but here's my take on it. So coding is something which you want to learn as you're starting out. So things like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I think they can really help you to understand the type of work that you're creating, because if you're just focusing on the UI UX design, you probably in your career you won't be required to code. I know that some jobs require you to code. Those are kind of hybrid jobs between UI UX design and front-end development usually. However, in my day-to-day, I don't really have to code, and I don't look for jobs or projects which require me to code. And but that being said, I understand HTML, I understand CSS and JavaScript, and I coded many web pages from scratch. What I can tell you is that the moment you do that, it's really going to help you out in understanding what you're building as a UI UX designer. So although you don't need to be an expert front-end developer in order to become a UI UX designer, you want to understand HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you might want to take the time to learn those languages and also code a few pages from the ground up. It's really going to help you. And then, you don't need to emphasize this section too much, but it's definitely going to help you out in your career, because you're going to understand what your team is actually, what the development team is doing once you hand off to them your designs. So another element which is very important is psychology and human behavior. So psychology and human behavior, it's just something which for the most part you're going to learn with books, and it's going to help you understand really what you are creating, and especially since UI UX design is so focused on the user, it's going to be something which is going to help you out for sure. Now let's move on to the next slide, which is one of the biggest questions which I'm asked so often, which is, which design software shall I use? Now at the moment in the marketplace, I would say there's 3 options. There's Figma, Sketch, and Adobe XD. Now which one is the best? I don't have an answer to that. What I can tell you is that if you go with Sketch, you're kind of in the safe zone, because a lot of design projects and jobs require you to know Sketch, but this is changing more often from what I'm seeing. Also Figma and Adobe XD are really or required more and more often. I would say it really depends on the job. However, one note when it comes to which design software you should use is that once you learn one, transitioning and learning another one is not that difficult. So for example, I use Sketch for many years, love it, and the moment I installed Figma in my computer and I opened my first Figma file, I already knew how to navigate and how to do most things. Like the learning curve wasn't that steep, or it wasn't steep at all. There were just some things to consider when it comes to components and some more minute detail things when it comes to design systems. But for the most part, once you learn one design tool, transitioning to another one is going to be quite easy, I would say, for the most part. So it shouldn't take you more than a day to actually really understand the other design tool. So this is definitely something to consider. So my best recommendation would be to learn either Sketch or Adobe XD these days, but also Figma is totally fine. So yeah, actually that wasn't one recommendation. If it was just one software, I would say Sketch, but again, really depends on the type of company you're applying to work with. So let's go back to the concept of finding a mentor, because I think this is definitely a big advantage, which it's definitely something that can help you. And regardless if you go with the self-taught road, the courses, or the university degree, I think that finding someone who's already been there and done that, as a general rule of thumb in life, it's always something which is really useful, because that individual, that person can help you save time, which is one of your biggest assets, and can help you save a lot of time and basically show you the quickest way to get to a specific point. Now, granted, there aren't like those many shortcuts, I guess. You always have to put in the work. But for example, if I'm looking back at my career, knowing what I know now, I could definitely get here faster now that I know, now that I've spent a lot of time doing all sorts of things. So again, finding someone who's already been there, done that, can be really, really useful. So don't skip this step. Now, let's talk about the portfolio, because at the end of the day, the end result of like after you learned all of those things that we mentioned earlier, once you learn design essentials, UI, UX, and web design, you know the design softwares, you know about psychology and human behavior. At the end, you want to create a portfolio, which is going to be the key to get into the gate of your first UI, UX design job or project. So the portfolio should be targeted around what your ideal client is. So if, for example, your ideal client is a tech company, maybe you want to work with SaaS tech companies and you want to create websites for them or web apps. Well, if you have a portfolio that shows websites or web apps for tech companies, that is going to help you quite a bit when you're reaching out for potential work. And it's going to be way better than, for example, having business cards or graphic design in your portfolio, because the more targeted you are, the easier it is for the client to see potential in your work, because he can say, oh, okay, cool, I need a website. I need a website design for my SaaS company. This guy has a website that he designed for another SaaS company. They like this website. Let's hire him. Compared to maybe like someone else who had a brilliant logo design for a fashion company. You see what I mean? So this is definitely something that you want to consider, and don't be afraid to think big when it comes to your potential clients. You might think, oh, I can't really like find tech companies, or I can't work with tech companies right away because maybe you need more experience to work with them. But I wouldn't limit myself to that. I would just create a portfolio which is as much targeted as I can to that specific type of company which I want to work with. So it's almost as if you were to do an ad, and the ad is want pizza, buy here. And anyone who's actively searching for pizza is going to click on that ad because it's so targeted. While if another person has an ad which says, hey, we're restaurants, we create all sorts of food, that ad is more general, it's more generic. So you can see your portfolio almost as an ad. You want it to be specific and talk directly to your ideal client. So keep in mind that you don't need like a long portfolio. Maybe just a one-page website with 2 to 4 portfolio pieces, projects. I would say it's enough nowadays. Now let's talk about networking for a moment, because networking can also be huge in our industry, because it can open doors that you wouldn't be able to open by yourself. So how does this work usually? Networking is just about like creating relationships with people in the industry. Sorry, and this can be with fellow designers or business owners, or just talking with people in the industry. You can send messages on the current designers on Dribble, or via Facebook or whatever other social platform you want. You can email them. You can ask for advice and things like that, and it can really be huge, because even if they don't have direct opportunities for you, they can surely help you in other ways. And maybe an opportunity is going to arise later on. They know you, they know the type of work that you do. It can really help. And in this business, it's not 100% about the work. A lot of it is about human relationships. And I would say that there's a lot of average designers out there who have great networks, and they make way more than some designers which are better from a skill point of view. So this is definitely something to keep in mind. It's not all about design work. A lot of it is about relationships, networking, and those kind of things. And this is something that I really wanted to learn earlier in my career, and I realized afterwards. But it really is the truth. So keep it in mind. Now, let's talk about work experience, because this is going to be the very last part. And everything that you build up so far, it's all going to be about finding your first work experience. So I would say, whenever you have your portfolio ready, just look for work as soon as possible. Even if it's not well paid or not paid at all, you're going to learn so much during the first projects, and especially during the first 1 or 2 years of your career, that the pay is not really that important, because the experience is going to pay dividends for you for the rest of your career. So definitely keep it in mind. When I first started out, apart from my internship, which was well paid for being an internship, Granted, London was an expensive city to live in, so you also have to consider that. But for example, during the third year of university, I worked for around 2 days a week for a startup company that had a good amount of funding, but the pay there was low, and understandably because I was a junior designer. But what I earned was experience, and the experience which I earned by working there with closely with the CEO and the COO, working on the website of the company, taking care of the web app and taking ownership of the web app and also the mobile app. All of those things helped me so much and made me earn a lot of money afterwards, as I could pitch bigger projects and just make more money because I had more experience and I could do better solutions. I could come up with better solutions in a smaller amount of time. So it's definitely something to consider. You want to get to work experience as soon as possible, and even if you go the university route, I would highly recommend you to at least do like freelance projects and things like that, because when you are in university and when you're taking a course, the class environment is really different compared to the actual work environment. So you definitely want to keep this in mind. So after that, it's all about keep going on. You never want to stop learning. You want to keep engaged in the design community, gather more work experience, get better clients so that you can grow your portfolio. And the more you grow your portfolio, the more testimonials and the more cool clients you have, the easier it's going to get to other clients. And it's just going to be a snowball effect. So it's going to take time, but it really adds up and it becomes easier with time. That's something that I wanted someone to tell me when I was struggling at the beginning. It does get easier because you can get better paying projects, and it all becomes better and better with time. So far we discussed the theory and what you need to know in order to learn UI UX design from a high level, especially when it comes to the curriculum and the schedule structure. But in this second video, we're going to go much more in depth when it comes to the practicalities, what are the exact resources which I recommend, and practically speaking, what you can do in order to get started right now. In this video, we'll talk about how to learn and get started into UI UX design. So the very first thing that I want to say is that we're going to get very practical, and in the previous video, which you can check out in the link in the description, you're going to be able to see the more theoretical part of how to learn UI UX design and what are the things to consider. But in this video, we're going to go practical. So let's get started. So the things that we're going to discuss in this video is the design basics and also, of course, a UI UX focus, and also the design tools and the study paths. Now, when it comes to the design basics, basically these are going to be the basics that you must learn no matter if you want to become a UI UX designer, a web designer, or even a graphic designer, because the design basics are going to remain the same. So I'm going to give you some books and tools to learn the design basics, and these are books which for the most part have had a great impact on my career, and that I strongly encourage to you to read and revise. So the very next part is the UI UX key resources, and these are going to be resources which are going to bring your user experience and digital skills to the next level. So these are going to be really useful. Now, another thing that we're going to discuss is design tools, because design tools and design softwares are actually like some of the questions which I receive the most on my YouTube channel and on my Instagram DMs is regarding which is the best design tool, which is one is most seeked out by employers and clients. So I'm going to answer all of these questions in just a moment. And we're also going to discuss about the different study paths which you have at your disposal if you want to get started and become a UI UX designer or even a web designer. So let's get started with the very first resource, which I strongly recommend you to check out. And by the way, all of these resources, I don't have any affiliate links. I don't have any affiliation with these books or the courses which I'm going to recommend. So I'm totally giving this as personal advice based on my personal experience. And Universal Design Principles, I think it's a great book. It enables you to learn the basic design principles in a fast and efficient way. And overall, just great to really understand things like usability, perception, and really learning about how to make design decisions efficiently. So great book, which I strongly recommend you if you're starting out in design. Now, let's talk about typography, since this is going to be a very, very important topic if you're going to branch out into the design world. And one of the best recommendations when it comes to learning typography and type in general is this book, which is Thinking with Type by Ellen Lupton. And I think this book is really good, especially for beginners that are approaching typography for the first time, since it covers both the basics and also advanced principles in a very easy way. And it's a very visual book, although there's also a lot of really good theory advice and a lot of classic text. And overall, I think it's a great book. So let's move on to the next one, which is Color Theory, and this is specifically Color by Betty Edwards. Great book if you want to learn about color and understanding all of the color theory principles. Now, the very next book is about branding, and branding is a very important core principle that you want to really learn about if you're getting into UI UX design, because pretty much all of the projects you're going to be involved with are going to have elements of brand identity, and you're going to need to keep in mind the brand identity of the client, or if they don't have one, you'll need to create one from scratch. And the website, the web apps, and the mobile apps are all going to be core and the very important elements of creating a company's brand identity. So really, in order to understand brand identity from the basics, I would recommend you to check out this book right here, which is Designing Brand Identity by Lena Wheeler. It's one of those books that are pretty much always recommended when it comes to branding, as it's a really, really good book. Now, another very important principle is grid systems and learning how to use grids, understanding the layouts. And the old classic book by Joseph Müller-Brockmann is definitely one of the most sought out books in this regard, and definitely a very good book. It has that old style feeling, but it's an evergreen in the subject. It's one of those books that you really can't go wrong, and it's just a great book if you want to learn about grid systems and the layout in general. Now, we talked about the design basics, and I recommended you some resources. And by the way, I recommended you books specifically because although there's a lot of blog posts and videos and that you can check out, I think that the act of learning design basics via the book just has another feeling, and it adds some more depth to the learning experience and especially focus. because it just adds another dimension, in my opinion. It's difficult to explain by words. It's more of it kind of gives you a more tactile feeling to your learning experience. And now let's discuss another really important element, which is, of course, UI UX design specific resources. So the very first resource which I recommend you to check out is Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug. And this is a classic because this book is pretty much all about user experience and and also web usability, and pretty much gives you a clear idea as to what the ideal user experience and what a usable experience really looks like. And the whole premise is that you don't want to make the user do a lot of hard work and, as the title suggests, a lot of thinking when it comes to creating your experiences. So definitely a great book to check out. And again, it's one of those evergreens in the design field. Now, another great book is Lean UX, and this really is going to have a big impact on your mindset when you're going to approach UX projects, since this is going to give you a really practical and tactical approach when you're designing products, and especially working with agile teams, which you're likely going to do a whole lot if you're going to work in UI UX design. Now, we briefly mentioned the importance of coding in the previous video, and we also mentioned that you don't necessarily need to become a front-end developer. You don't necessarily need to be like super good at coding, but you definitely want to learn the basics of HTML and CSS, and also some knowledge, and you want to have some experience with JavaScript and jQuery, even if it's just from a high level. And the books from John Duckett, I think they're unmatched in terms of quality of the learning experience, because and I tried a lot. I bought a lot of books on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and I think that these books are amazing. They're really well thought out. They're very visual, and they express the concepts in a very simple and efficient way. So definitely check them out. And now let's move on to one of my favorite book series when it comes to design and also web and UI UX design specifically, and that is the series From a Book Apart. Now, as you can see, if you go on their website and you click on the start section, you're going to have some starter packs, and I highly recommend you to check them out, because especially the one on responsive design and collaborative design, also the ones on the process, but really like there's a lot of gems in the books, and definitely really cool learning material, and you're going to have like books for months and months. They really have a lot of them, and yeah, overall I think great learning and reading selection. Now let's also open a brief parenthesis when it comes to YouTube and Medium. Now, I think that in order to add into your learning experience, you should also look into YouTube and also Medium articles, specifically because in the world of UI UX, Medium is kind of a big deal. There's a lot of top UI UX designers which write on Medium, and especially in the Muesli section, and yeah, overall you can find some really great articles. Now also on YouTube there's a lot of great videos out there, And although I have some channels in mind, I wouldn't really focus on just suggesting you one channel and tell you like, oh, you need to learn everything that on that specific channel. But because on YouTube there's a lot of different videos, and some channels excel in some areas, other ones excel in other ones. So my best recommendation is to keep your mind open when it comes to YouTube, and have a look around at different videos and see also which instructor resonates more with you. For example, on my YouTube, I have over 300 videos. So if you're in they are all about design, both software tutorials, theory lessons, just like this one, and also on other things like the business aspect, the marketing, the freelancing, and how to do that. So definitely a lot on YouTube, but yeah, there's also a lot of other channels which you might as well check out, since the number of topics are really high in this field. Now let's talk about the different routes as to how you can learn UI UX design. So the very first one is the self-taught route, and the pros are that it's entirely like you set the base for your learning. You can invest 1 hour a week, you can invest 5 hours, 10 hours, or even more, and it's usually regarded as the cheapest route, since you don't have to make a whole lot of investment up front in order to learn. Now, the second one is the part-time or full-time courses, and these include also boot camps. And then there's the third route, which is college and university, which usually is the most long path and also the most expensive one. Now, I dabbled in all three of them, meaning that I started by learning by myself using a self-taught route. Then I transitioned to a part-time course, so I have experience with that as well. And then I also attended a BA in graphic design at Ravensbourne University in London, and that was a 3 years degree. So I kind of have experience when it comes to all three of these routes. And my best suggestion, if you're going with the first one, is to find a mentor. And the simple reason is that a mentor is going to keep you focused on the things that matter the most. It's going to keep track of the progress, and it's going to understand what are your weaknesses, weak points that you need to insist upon, and also keep you accountable, which is a great thing. And I think it's definitely worth the investment. And by the way, I'm not pitching any mentorship. I'm not doing any mentorship at the moment. So just a brief disclaimer on that, since just to demonstrate, I'm not really I'm not giving the suggestion with a second goal. So I just think that genuinely finding a mentor is just a really good idea if you're starting out pretty much in any field. You want to find someone who's already been there, done that, and can teach you how to do the same. Now, if you're going with the self-taught route, definitely study all of the key books. I mentioned plenty in this video, but there's many more that, of course, you can consider. And also develop portfolio projects, since your portfolio is going to be the key in order to get the first experiences with clients. And basically, you want to get to industry experience, to get some work experience as soon as you can, and because that is going to give you is going to speed up your learning curve dramatically, and also give you portfolio items to get more experience and get better projects, better paying projects, and you can go from there all the way to getting a full-time position at your dream job. Now, the second option is to go with the part-time or full-time course. Now, the only one which I tried is from the graphicdesignschool.com. And although the focus was on graphic design, and I also took the web design certificate, but this was a while ago. I don't even know if they have it anymore. I can tell you that the course was structured really, really well. So it's the only one which I can really recommend because I did it. And when it comes to the boot camps, you might want to find either local boot camps or even remote ones. The choice is totally up to you. But I would recommend you to find a local UI UX bootcamp or course, because you're going to also to interact quite a bit more with other students, and maybe learning in the class is going to be a better experience overall, just more engaging. But if you cannot do that, also online you can find plenty of courses. Just be sure to do your research and check out the reviews, but also speak with previous students if you can, in order to really evaluate if that course or bootcamp is good. Now let's talk about the third option, which is college or university. Now this is the most expensive option and also the time-consuming one. Is it worth it? I can say 100% if it's like the best option out of them all. I personally been to university, and I can tell you it helped me to get my foot in the door when it comes to the first work experience. But I definitely think that you can get to my same position also by doing a course or doing the self-taught route. Maybe it's going to take a little bit more, but there's definitely you're not at a massive disadvantage if that's what you're thinking, if you don't go to college or university. I know very successful designers that didn't attend a design college or university. So definitely, if you cannot do that option, don't worry about it too much. But it's definitely an option that you can consider if you have the resources to do it. And personally, I would recommend you to go either to Europe or US and Canada. Overall, in the design industry, from what I heard, it's like those are kind of like the best locations, especially since you're going to find work more easily, especially in the US and Canada. Afterwards, like those are usually the places where you can find the higher paid positions. So definitely consider, although the cost of the tuition is significantly higher, so also take that in consideration. But again, these are just really broad guidelines, so it's not like you should absolutely just do this, or otherwise it's not good. It's still a really good learning experience anyways. Just again, like for the courses, do your research, talk with previous students, and really evaluate the decision hard before you make a decision. So design tools, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Any one of these free design tools are totally fine. Just choose one and master it. Reason being is that especially if you're working as a freelancer or as a consultant, most of the times companies don't care what design software you're going to use. Now the second reason is that if you learn one design software, learning the other one is going to be a very small learning curve, since they are very, very similar at this time. Maybe it's going to take you like a day or two to transition from Figma to Sketch or Sketch to Adobe XD, but it's definitely not a big deal. So yeah, I would just focus on one. Each and every one of these design softwares can do pretty much the same thing. So yeah, it's I wouldn't stress too much about it. Now, on a final note, I want to recommend you to always develop side projects And these are going to be really useful also to integrate in your portfolio. And I cannot tell you the amount of times that a side project, which I just did for fun, or as literally like as a side project, and then I put it in the portfolio, and then a client hired me simply because I had that side project in the portfolio, because it was really good design, was really well thought out. There was a logic behind it. So definitely something to consider. You don't necessarily need to show real life projects, especially when you're first starting out in the portfolio to get hired, because most of the times clients just want to see your potential when it comes to executing their projects, and they also want to understand that your logic, so that there is thinking involved and a problem solving mindset behind the project. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But yeah, side projects and that you're going to add in your portfolios are going to have a massive impact on your career. And also get work experience as soon as you can, and start small. And if you're just starting out, like, I wouldn't really worry about getting paid. If you can get paid, that's good. But if it's like your first project or second project, the experience that you're going to get from the client is going to pay dividends throughout your entire career. And later on, once you have a little bit of experience, it's not going to be an issue getting paid regularly. So yeah, that's definitely something to consider. But again, if you can get paid, like, absolutely go for it without thinking twice about it. But yeah, just keep in mind that experience is going to really pay a lot of dividends throughout your career. So just want to finish up saying to enjoy also the journey, because everything that you want to get to is eventually going to happen. Seems like a very long road now, but you're going to get there. So yeah, enjoy the journey, and hope this video was helpful. I'll see you in the next one.